The United States itself is revisiting its posture, both at home and abroad, for the military. So, I think, in part, given that uncertainty, we opted not to make any major determinations about this.
Dr Hill, if I may, General Barron's just said that the Munich Security Conference happened and then there was a realisation, the penny drops, that there was a change in American posture in Europe, or, America was less engaged in European security. There's few people in the world with the level of expertise that you have about Trump and Russia and the nexus of those two things. Is it not completely obvious that from the election of Trump in November that the American posture with respect to Europe would be changing?
Well, actually, to be honest, it was to us, to the three of us as the reviewers, and to actually the members of the team. We'd already factored in that no matter what, as you rightly point out, given obviously not just personal experiences, but much broader ranged analysis of the situation, that you were going to get less of a commitment from the United States. In fact, to be frank, irrespective of whether it was President Trump or perhaps even President Harris in November of last year as a result of the election. Because it had been made very clear, in fact, going back to 2014, when President Barack Obama hosted or was participated in the NATO summit that was hosted in Wales, that the United States wanted to see European members of NATO and Canada as well to step up their commitment. If you recall, back in 2014, the commitment was made to have 2% GDP of spending. So the trajectory had already been there, that the United States wanted to see European and other allies play a greater role.
Thank you.
And if, as you're rightly pointing out, anybody had been paying attention to the debate within the United States, you would already see that there was a reluctance for the United States to be constantly taking the lead and setting the strategic agenda for matters of European security, including on Ukraine.
Thank you. So
that came out in discussions during the Biden administration. So we had factored that in. It was just really a kind of a matter of degree as to whether other people had made that same set of conclusions as we had.
Okay, so you seem to be saying that it was obvious to you from November rather than what General Barron said, which was there was a realisation later on.
Well, I think that what General Barron said was correct in that was the realisation for others.
Okay.
That in fact that this was a major turning point.
Thank you.
We had already been making these cautions that the United Kingdom and the rest of our European allies would have to be seen to be doing more, which is the important element in the transformational nature of this defence review. But it certainly wasn't the case that this was a popular realisation, and I mean that at a public level, perhaps politically, not just across the UK but elsewhere within the alliance.
Right, thank you, Dr Hill. The report sets out what you view as a new era of threat. So, are the timelines and the funding profile that you were asked to work within appropriate to counter these threats, Dr Hill?
Well, look, I think as both General Barron's and Lord Robertson have spelled out, and as we've all been discussing, a lot of this is very much dependent on events. And, we talked about, basically a major pivotal point in February at the Munich Security Conference after the speech of Vice President Vance. And prior to that, Secretary of Defence Hegseth at the meetings in Brussels just a week or so before, a series of events like this, making it very clear that the United States was not committed in the same way that it might have been previously. We also talked about that longer trajectory of change. Mm-hmm. And, this is, what we're looking at in terms of the larger threat level. We've just had, since, in fact, the report was released, this major operation by the Ukrainians in which they delivered drones into the Russian heartland, basically by a stealth operation that also delves back almost into antiquity in terms of a Trojan horse approach. And that's really transformed the way that we should all be thinking, about threats. So things happen on a daily, weekly basis, which can change the way that we might perceive the urgency of the threat. I think this is what we're saying here all the time here. This is part of a national debate that this hearing is part of, in which we have to get people to understand, both at the political level, in Parliament and in the public, that the world is changing very rapidly. And what we're trying to do, and what we've been trying to do with the review, is to lay out basically capabilities and a different mindset that we're going to need to basically adapt to everything as it comes our way.
Right.
And I think that's really kind of the message here. This is not static. This is, very much everything is in play at all times here, and everything changes, really dramatically, even as we're basically speaking here. So we have to get ourselves prepared. We have to be engaged as a country, not just in, various sectors that have a particular interest in defence, and kind of thinking about how we best position ourselves to meet the challenges.
Right. Thank you much.
Are there other comments that reviewers would like to make on that? Obviously, very sensitive. Dr. Hill?
Yes, I would actually like to emphasise something that, perhaps doesn't get as much attention, as a result of these larger threat questions, which are, thinking, in the realm that you've laid out here about the military threat. The United Kingdom, like every other European country, is under constant attack and assault from Russia, even as we speak. And obviously, in terms of cyber intrusions, political influence operations, and frankly, the United Kingdom has already been the site of 2 attacks using polonium, radioactive material, against Alexander Litvinenko, which of course had a major impact here in the City of London, and also the use of a weapons-grade nerve agent, a Novichok, in the English city of Salisbury. And we have to bear those in mind. Of course, there were casualties as a result of this, including the death of Dawn Sturgis, a UK citizen, directly as a result of that attack by the Russian security services. We know from hearings at Parliament and reports coming from the UK intelligence services of sabotage operations and the recruiting, obviously, of agents from other countries to operate within the United Kingdom to push back against UK support for Ukraine, for example. So this is something that is active. Threats to our critical national infrastructure. I mean, we looked at that in really rather key detail. The concerns about gas pipelines, for example, coming from Norway, the vulnerabilities there, undersea cables, all of these issues. So, I mean, again, the review stresses a great deal of attention that needs to be paid to the homeland.